Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Machine Learning Podcast, Pakistan, the first one. And this is the beginning of a lot of amazing podcasts that will be coming your way. It's tailored towards ML and AI, but there will be a lot of interaction with really cool people among the industry, especially from the people from Pakistan. And I'm going to just quickly share about what Machine Learning Pakistan is, why did it come into being, and how it did. So, we have had already some groups in Pakistan named Machine Learning Islamabad. We also have TensorFlow user group, and the names of these groups, the TensorFlow ones, changed after a while according to Google's policy. But we kept the TensorFlow user group because it was so big and people actually knew that. But I want to quickly share about how it started. So I'm going to share my screen. If you don't know this guy, you should. He's Ali Nawaz. He's one of the most amazing people that I know from the community. He has been super active in the community. He has been in touch with me with a lot of WhatsApp groups, a lot of information, a lot of organizing different community events and whatnot. I cannot imagine being so active as this person, where people actually say that I am very active. So I'm afraid of this guy, so to say. One of the achievements that we did, or this guy did, is that he built a community, the TensorFlow user group Islamabad. It did so many events in a really short span of time that we actually got an award from Google of the fastest growing community in the world related to ML in the Google ML program. And this is, I think, one of the biggest achievements that anyone can do being in a community. And this is the screenshot of what you can see. So we got the AI ML Community Award of 1H 2024. And when I say we, it's not just me, it's completely Ali at the moment. And then I got involved in the machine learning one as well. But enough of what Machine Learning Pakistan is all about, because you'll get to know us, you'll get to work with us as well, and you'll get to see a lot of cool things coming in. Today, I want to introduce someone who is a machine learning expert, who is right now a tech lead, um, and who's a Google developers expert as well. So they're an amazing person. They've been working in the machine learning space for more than 5 years. They have a medical experience background, electrical engineering background, a lot of cool stuff. And her name is Tahreem Rasul. She's working at Red Buffer at the moment. And what I could see from her profile is she has been very active in leading with AI and machine learning. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Tahreem on stage and I'll let her introduce herself. And yeah, there you go. Assalamu alaikum, Tahreem.
Welcome, Sam. Thank you for the introduction, Asim. I'm really happy to be doing this. I just heard that this is the first one, so I hope it goes well. And I think you've already given that introduction, but I'll just give a brief one myself. So, my background, like you said, is in electrical engineering. I graduated from NUST H12 campus. That was a few years ago. I went then in 2018 for my master's. So just a few months later, after my graduation, I went for my master's to Germany. I did my master's in a very interesting field. So it was medical engineering with a focus on artificial intelligence and image processing. So it was medical AI almost, and then that program was lasted for almost 3 years. So I was in Germany from 2018 to 2021, and during that time I was working as a research assistant for different companies, mostly for two companies. Fraunhofer, there I worked as a deep learning engineer, and then at Siemens Healthineers, so that was as a medical physicist. So I've had several interesting, I think, and diverse experiences under my belt during, I think, my since the start of my career. And then I decided to come back to Pakistan because it was the pandemic, and it was just very, very difficult to be in Germany during the lockdown, and it was just everything was just shut down. So I came back in 2021.
Mm,
Took a few months to just settle in, and then I joined. I think the industry in Pakistan as an ML engineer, and right now, like you mentioned, I'm at Red Buffer. I've been with them for almost 2 years, and I'm currently working there as a tech lead in the AI, you know, team. So yeah, that's a quick introduction about who I am and where I come from.
absolutely. So, just a segue from what you have told us, what could you tell us? What is the biggest challenge that you're working right now at your job, being an AI tech lead?
Right. So I think that there are several challenges when you are working, when you're leading a team or you're delivering projects. But I think I'd like to divide the challenges into technical challenges, and then managerial or leadership challenges. Because of course, with this position, it's not just you're not just building or designing or developing technical solutions. You're also managing a team of engineers who are working, alongside you or with you. So from a technical aspect, I think um, it's a lot of as you as you go in your career, it's less coding, more design work, more decision work, more communication work when you're working directly, of course, also with clients. So I think I've never really struggled with communication, too, if I'm being very honest. So I
Mhm,
think, but even then, I've had to learn things while delivering projects or while um, you know, uh, yeah, while participating in these discussions with clients. So I think there's challenges around that, but I think most of the challenges come when you're working with a team of engineers where everyone has a really diverse skill set, right?
mm,
So everyone has their strengths and their weaknesses,
mm,
and they have their own personalities, and then you have deadlines and you're delivering projects. So I think as you become a lead, or when you become, of course my role is very technical, some of the technical side of things, but even if you're an engineering manager, you have to manage resources. So I think working to people's strengths, and then along the way also mentoring them and ensuring that they're also growing.
mm.
uh, I think that's not a, yeah, that, and some, maybe it comes naturally to some people, but I've had my fair share of misses along the way, so I've had to learn it. So I think for me that's the bigger challenge of the role,
Mm.
um, and not the technical side of it. Not so much. I think as engineers we really do know how to navigate the technical side of things, but
Mm.
as a lead, I think that's something that I'm still figuring out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big fan of reflection. So what you're saying, I was just reflecting through it while
Yeah.
multitasking, and it feels to me like it's the same as when I take my kid to a museum. We went to a museum in Stockholm recently. It's called the Paradox Museum. So everything is like super weird, and there's so many rooms. And me and my wife are like, okay, let's go to the next one and let's see, what that room has. But my kid always wanted to go to the first one. And there were so many people there, and it was like a path where you start from a point. It's a very small bridge, and it's super dizzy, and everybody is just in line to go through that. And then there's my kid just running around in the middle of them while they're trying to take their pictures. I'm like, no, please let them. And I think it also is really important what you said, that to help them grow is the really difficult task, because you can't do it by force. You need to adapt to the situation and also see how to let them grow and not like babysit them or mentor too much, not too little. So it's a very difficult task. I can agree. um but regarding your career, it was really fascinating to see, because it's a bit different. For me, it was okay. I was basically studying computer science, and then I became a programmer. But you, on the other hand, had an electrical engineering background, and then you transitioned to medical engineering. What inspired you, or how did you make that decision?
Right. So that's a very interesting question, and I get it very often. And I think for a rather long time in my own journey, I used to really question why, I used to think, what if I'd become a computer scientist and pursued that degree, and maybe it would have made things easier for me. I don't think like that anymore. And I'll let you know why in a second. But so I really liked math and physics. I was really good at those subjects when I was in my high school. So it just I never studied computers. I didn't know what programming was. So, with the combination of math and physics, with some, I guess, advice from family members, it seemed that electrical engineering was the right degree. Unfortunately, in our country, that entire career counseling thing is
Mm,
completely missing. We don't let people. I think you're so young when you're 18 or 19, right? We don't
true.
let young people um, and I really hope that that changes in the future. We don't let them just play around for like a year or 2 years and then just figure out what their major would be.
Mm,
So I also didn't get it. So I remember the first year of my university was completely lost. I was like that deer in headlight situation. I was like, what is going on? And the thing that I didn't understand was program. Like I wanted to understand it, I wanted to enjoy it, but I didn't really understand it. And
mm,
there were so many bits and pieces. And anyone who's currently doing an electrical engineering degree or has done it would know that the first 2 years they throw a little bit of everything at you, and then in the last 2 years you can just sort of pick electives and then let that shape your direction a little bit. So the first 2 years it was this, but I very quickly figured out. I think the second semester,
mm,
I took this C++ course that was compulsory. It was offered, and I really enjoyed it. I really worked hard in that course to understand the fundamentals and how to sort of like how things work. But I
mm,
quickly understood that I had a knack for it.
mm,
And given enough time, I can become good at it. So I think from just like first second semester onwards, I knew that I'm more interested in the computer science side of the degree than the electronics power side of things. So that sort of also helped me pick my electives. Um, in my final semester, there's a hype train of machine learning. It had started, and I remember this friend or this batchmate said, "Oh, you know what? They're offering a machine learning course, and it's like all the hype." And I don't know why, but I just like, okay, sure, I'll just take it. So I took that course. I fell in love with it. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. And that was the first time I think in my entire 4 years that I had felt that way for a domain or a subject.
mm,
And then I think medical engineering happened because I was just interested in the application of computer science, electronics, etc. All the stuff that we were studying for different domains, so healthcare, sports, etc. And then my final year project was for this. We were building this wearable device that we wanted to help physiotherapists and people in healthcare to reconstruct motion and then use that to better align physiotherapy sessions. So that was the I think the idea behind the final year project. So I think one thing led to the other, and I was just really lucky that I found a major in Germany while I was doing my research and applying for masters.
mm,
And I found something that was just a perfect mix of everything. There was AI, there was medical, there's um, computer science, and then there's a bit of everything thrown in that.
mm,
It was a very interdisciplinary course, so I enjoyed that. I like the idea of that. And I also knew that the headquarters of Siemens Healthineers was in Erlangen, the city that I was moving to. So that was also motivation
mm,
for finalizing that. But I was very naive, if I'm being very honest, and I just got very lucky that things aligned, and just I was able to wing it. It was mostly I was winging it, to be honest, but Alhamdulillah, it aligned, I think, as well.
Alhamdulillah, yeah, and it's funny when you see like all the dots connecting when you look back,
Yeah.
because a lot of people have similar stories as well, and I also have a similar story. I was actually I applied to a couple of universities, and the university I actually ended up in, I didn't even prepare for the test for it, and I just gave and like, okay, computer science looks cool, just give it.
Mhm.
But I was more focused on, as every Pakistani boy is like, I'm gonna be a civil engineer, or I'm going to be an engineer, or I'm going to be doing something with architecture or something. And I was just about to go and pick architecture. um, but it I had no idea what the field had. I just knew that it came with a degree, that is engineering. And just about when I was, about to submit the fee at the bank, I got a call from my friend, and he said, "Hey, I saw the results, and you're selected in the computer science one, and I am also." And I'm like, "Okay, let's talk to the father." And then I had to convince my father, computer science is not as
Yeah,
bad as people say. It's
yeah,
also worth something like engineering. So it's funny how that exact moment shaped
yeah.
everything. But it's really good to hear your story, of course. When you started your career, did you face any challenge, being a woman in tech, of course, since that's a topic? And if there were any challenges, how did you overcome them?
Right. So it's interesting because I started my career, I think, in Germany. So things are very different in Germany.
Mm,
And there were a lot of women and girls in tech. So also in the university, I'd say I'd say a 50-50 ratio,
mm,
from a rough estimate of boys to girls in the university, on the university campus. It was a tech campus, the one that it was called the Technische Fakultät. That was the bus stop. I still remember that. And then in my classes as well, it was just 50-50. And
mm,
then it was so refreshing because during my undergrad, I remember this so vividly that this was such a discussion, and topic of discussion, and discussion subject that we keep talking about. There are not enough girls in our classes. I
mm,
think there were like hardly 12 or 15 girls in our degree, and I think we were like 150 to 200 people in our batch of electrical engineering. So it was a very tiny amount in my undergrad. And then when
mm,
I moved to Germany, it was just completely different. So I didn't feel underrepresented, or I was at a disadvantage because I was
mm,
in a minority, group or a class, and that applied also when I was applying for jobs, applying for internships. There were always girls in the class. So I think that really helped me in that conversation sort of left my subconscious for at least for
mm,
those 3 years, and they were really formative years. But then when I came back to Pakistan, I think
mm,
it was similar. I think gender stereotypes and
mm,
similar conversations. But I think I came with a good baggage, and
mm,
a good sense of confidence and you know esteem. So I think that really helped.
mm,
But I've always, in my professional career, I felt questioned, or I have been questioned quite often, and I
mm,
felt quite often that I've had to work harder to prove myself. So I'm sure guys work hard as well, but I
mm,
just got a taste of it when I went to Germany. That when that conversation leaves, even your own headspace,
mm,
when you're not actively thinking about, I need to prove them wrong because I'm the only girl, or I'm one of the few girls here, and
mm,
there are gender stereotypes at play that I need to sort of address. And when that conversation leaves your own mind,
mm,
that this it frees up energy for so many other things. So I think, unfortunately, it's because of the place that I work at. It's the company is really good.
mm,
We've had female role models and female leaders in the team before me, so I think that has really shaped the dynamic here. But I
mm,
think just in general, that's been something that I've had to feel growing up,
mm,
and then also as through my career, when there've been instances where I've had to go in, with like more, I guess, I can do this. So I
mm,
think that's been there. But I've also been fortunate that I was brought up uh, by parents that never let that dynamic into the family. So it was never, oh, you're a girl, you can't do this,
mm,
you can't, you can't study this, or you can't go there, blah blah blah. So I think personality wise, it's the last thing. And if that conversation ever comes up, I'm very active or willing to prove those people wrong. So it's been a mix, I think. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely been there, but I've not let it define my identity
Hmm.
uh, in my journey.
Hmm. That's awesome, and I think that it's no argument that women have it a bit tough compared to men. Even though, yeah, men work hard as well, I know,
Yeah.
but obviously comparatively, it's a bit different, and there's so many factors to it. It's generations of trauma. It's how we have developed our culture. There's a really good book by someone named Mariam Munir called Cycle Breakers. I would encourage the audience to read that, and that talks about why we react in certain ways, and why we lose control, and why we have these thoughts coming up in our head, and how we think and perceive things as well. So it was an eye opener for me, and especially for my kid and how I treat my kid as well. So yeah, it's tough in that particular regard, but as you mentioned, when we leave those things behind, it's so much room for innovation to work. And I often talk to my friends about this as well, that just not having those discussions or these simple problems, like not being stuck in traffic, and not having to go to pick up a gallon of water every day. It gives you so much time to do other things as well, but hopefully we'll get there sometime soon, inshallah. Awesome. One more thing, it's when I saw your profile and I got to know you, I also got to know that you are a Google developers expert in machine learning. How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a very recent accomplishment. Very sweet, and I think once again I think things just aligned. Uh, at Red Buffer we've had Aksa, so she was the first female GDE. And I think, and there's also Imran Salam. I think he's still a GD. Both of them are still GDs, but they were one of the early ones. And I think when you're at a place where people are constantly working on improving yourself themselves, you're also encouraged to do it for yourself, right? So I think I'd like to give that credit of where I got the idea, just simply because, and we were talking the other day, you and I, right? And you also mentioned that there's someone for you as well, that your company was, who led that discussion, and you found out about it. So it
Hmm,
was very similar for me. I saw her doing really good things, and I'd always been passionate about, I think, sharing information.
hmm,
I knew the impact um, that communities work in the field of tech can do, uh, especially for communities like Pakistan, where resources can be scarce. So, I knew the impact that it would make. And for I think the last year and a half, I've just been very active in the community. And I've led different activities. It just once again started by someone at Red Buffer invited me to give a talk at a virtual, I guess, you know, online space, and that sort of started it. And then I one thing led to the other, and before I knew it, I was looking at Google events, GDG events in Islamabad. And then during that time, I was also at some point I also started writing articles for towards data science.
hmm,
That was and still is a lot of fun. I really do enjoy writing a lot. So it's one of the things in the community part that I really enjoy. And then yeah, I found out, I found out about Nitin. So he's also a Google developer expert from India. And I remember I saw something that he had been working on. I reached out to him. I found it really interesting. That led to a conversation. I introduced myself, and he was like, you have a good profile, why don't you try? So I think he mentored me. One thing led to another again, and I was able to, I guess, and it happened very quickly. So I think the entire process took me a few weeks, 1 or 2 months, I think, at max. So yeah, I'm just starting out, but I'm excited about all the possibilities, because I think JDs are doing really amazing work in all the respective fields. I'm interested and excited to see would I be able to contribute in the AI space.
Awesome. And now what you said just makes me act like those elderly people, like, we struggled so hard for this, and then there she comes in a few weeks. Because I remember when I asked my shoot, I was like, okay, you're applying for a GDE, I want to do so as well. Can I do it? And he was like, no, you cannot at the moment, you don't have the profile. Just wait,
Mm,
wait for 6 months. The next round of evaluations would be in 6 months, and you need to have a lot of talks given, articles, blah blah blah. And then I
yeah,
worked really hard. I went to a lot of software houses to give some conference talks and whatnot. But just sort of seeing these two different situations where it took a bit more time versus a bit lesser time. For someone who is very comfortable talking, I think it becomes really easy. Someone who's passionate, who's outgoing, an extrovert maybe. But people who are not really as much into communities or talking, what would you say can be a beginning point for them towards contributing and, let's say, applying for a GDE position? What do you think?
right. Yeah, so I think I completely agree that. So I'd heard those opinions from a lot of people who
Hmm.
said it's very difficult, and even I think in my office, I told my, the CEO, and he was like, "Really, it's done, it's happened." And I was like, "Yeah." So he's also surprised because it's not as simple for a lot of folks. And I think what helped me was that I knew, because of the people around, that this is roughly what the process looks like. And the idea of becoming a GDE, I mean, lots of people might not believe it, but it came like I wasn't doing all the community work. I wasn't doing all these talks or writing articles to become GDE. So that was not motivation for me. And I think that can lead to burnout sometimes, because when you have this one thing that you want to achieve and then you're doing all of these things, maybe the efforts can become a little polluted, I guess, because you're like doing it for this whole purpose. But I just really enjoyed, I think, that entire, the learning and it's a community service. I think it's still very selfish. Like we say we're doing it for the community, but you're learning so much along the way.
Hmm.
So for me, it came from a very selfish desire of, oh, I want to learn how this works, and I'd implement it, and then I'd be like, oh, this is cool. Why don't I just write something on this or give a talk on this? So maybe it finds its way to other people as well. So I think so that might be another thing. Start off with just being genuinely curious, I'd say, and let that guide you. See where that takes you. See where your curiosity takes you. Maybe public speaking might not be the medium. Maybe it's something else.
Hmm.
So I'd encourage to find your own path. Of course, you can see how other people did it, but it's going to be different for everyone.
Hmm.
So I think that can be important. And I still think all these skills, such as writing and public speaking and everything, the skills that need to be developed. So I'm not going to proclaim that just because I have good communication skills, or I don't think I'm an extrovert, but like I find it easy to talk to people.
Hmm.
That led to me just getting, like, turning my screen on and getting on a call and then delivering a technical topic. I still remember my first 5 or 6 sessions were extremely nerve wracking. I was like, oh, what have I put myself into? Like, I don't know how to do this. And to this day, sometimes, of course, it gets easier as you do it.
Hmm.
But now I just, the nerves are far less. So I think as you do it, more and more often, as you put yourself in uncomfortable situations, not dangerous situations, but uncomfortable situations where you're just like presenting it in front of a group of people, really helps. And I think the mindset that I had and that I'd encourage people to adopt as well is, if people are attending your meeting or the event, they're there to learn. They're not, nobody is an expert, not any more than you, because I think that imposter syndrome is real for a lot of us, right?
Hmm.
So I was like, if these people are coming to my event, they're not coming to shoot me down and say, oh, you said that wrong. It's a discussion. And sometimes audiences or people in the audience would know more than me in a few events that has happened. and I'm fine with that.
mm,
At the end of the day, because my goal is, I'm just, you know, it's curiosity and learning how things work, and going from there. So uh, I think it's a mindset thing.
mm,
So in whatever capacity you can start, I encourage everyone to start
mm,
contributing. That's what I'd encourage, and then let it see
mm.
where that takes you.
Absolutely. Do you think that maybe writing articles is the easiest? For example, if I'm just starting out,
Hmm.
and I'm looking into something related to, let's say, machine learning, but I might just write something about Python since it's one of the core languages. Do you think that just writing a really small article and then sharing it with someone to review is the least exposed idea, so to say, or exposing yourself to others with the imposter syndrome? Or do you think there's something
Uh,
better even?
I think so. It depends on who you are. I
Hmm.
know that. So there've been people in my company have come to me for advice, and there were some of them were like, "We really hate writing articles, so don't recommend that to us.
Hmm.
We enjoy public speaking." So I think it depends a lot on what you
Hmm.
enjoy.
Okay.
So there's not going to be one size fits all. With exposure, it depends where you're publishing. So if you're publishing at your own Medium profile, or at a publication that isn't made up of a lot of leaders, then
Hmm.
of course the exposure is going to be less. But if you're publishing for something like towards data science or towards AI, they have a
Hmm.
sizable audience. They market or advertise their articles a lot, so you're going to get decent exposure.
Hmm.
So it depends on what you enjoy, and maybe you just enjoy coding. So in that case, you don't like either public speaking or writing. Then
Hmm.
just push your code to a Git repo and then just write some a good README perhaps, and then just share a demo of that.
Yep.
And I've seen people do that, and that works wonderfully as well. So just figure out, I guess,
Hmm.
what you enjoy doing, and then let that be, like I said, let your curiosity guide you,
Hmm.
and be fine with wherever it takes you. And maybe along the way, you can open yourself up to becoming more comfortable. So I had to become comfortable with speaking at events.
Hmm.
Writing came naturally to me.
Hmm.
I think, yeah, I think let your gut guide you along the way.
Absolutely. I think one of the key factors also is having good mentors, maybe. So, a question to you: who were your key mentors? You mentioned Nathan, but were there other mentors during your journey? And how do you think we can have a better sort of mentoring culture for specifically for women in AI?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And I've been asked this question before, and I never know how to answer it. And it's not because I've not had mentors. I've had some really great, kind, smart people guide me along the way. Um, but I think it isn't there isn't this one angel person that I can think of that's been there and guided me through all the highs and lows of my career.
Hmm.
So I think I've sort of figured out who a mentor would be for a particular space or time in my life or in my career, and then I've had the courage to hit that person up. So there've
Hmm.
been several people. There've been people at my company at Red Buffer, my managers who have who've helped me. So, for example, when I was transitioning from a senior to a tech lead role, uh, a lot of things come with it. If you're going from a primarily technical to more of a leadership role, it didn't come naturally or easy to me. So they were good mentors, and they weren't the nicest people sometimes, but and I really appreciate that, because I needed that at that time. I found mentors in my juniors, and
Hmm.
when they've given that feedback. So I've had so many people. I had mentors when I was working in Germany. So I think I've had quite a lot of people who've been willing to sort of be there for me. And then I think something that has worked for me, and I think something that I'd also advise people in the audience to do, is at a particular, don't think that you can, because I see this a lot, and I'm not sure if it has happened with you as well. But sometimes someone would come and say, we're still in university, we're fresh out, and just tell us how how we can do all of this. Like that's just difficult. So figure out, like, start your journey. Then you're stuck. You can reach out to someone and ask them really, um, specific questions, and see if they can help. And
Mm,
then that's your mentorship. And then you use that, and then you get a little unstuck. And then in the next phase, maybe that last person in the next phase of your career or your life cannot help you. And in
mm,
in that next phase, it's up to you to find a new mentor or a new person. And maybe sometimes it's self discovery. A lot of times that advice has come through podcasts or through books,
mm,
through YouTube channels of strangers that don't know me and don't know who that I exist, but have had a tremendous impact on my life. So yeah, I think for me, it's more like, uh, I want to do this. It's always that's been my mentality. I get this thought of, I want to do this. I really want to achieve this. How do what steps do I need to take today? What can I do today to help me achieve this goal that seems huge? And then I would take those steps that day, and then I'd get stuck, and then I'd be like, okay, let me hit this person up. And then I'd get unstuck. And it's one day at a time, and before I know it, I'm mostly I've mostly achieved my goal. So
mm.
that's my process. I don't know if I call it the winging process. Like, I just wing things, and then after a while,
Yeah.
it's another goal. But
Yeah.
yeah, that I think that's how I view mentorship in
Mm.
my in my journey.
Absolutely. And I can extract two things from here. One is people who usually reach out, at least to me, also have the same question like, tell us this or that, or what do I do? And it feels like there is a huge fear of failure,
Yeah.
and that's because they're asking like, tell us exactly what we can do so we don't lose any time, and we can achieve things faster. And that, I think, that really holds someone back from learning or experimenting with
Yes.
that regard. And I'm always like, my answer is like, it depends, try this and that and see which one you
Mm.
like, and then you go from there. Everything has equal opportunities. Like yesterday someone reached out and said, I'm a front end developer. Should I learn, another framework, or should I do back end development? And I'm like, try both and see
Yeah.
which one you like more, because both have equal opportunities. And even if you fail, then you can switch. It's not the end of life or end of your career. So that's
Yeah.
one thing. And also another thing that I extract from this is the mindset of letting the goal aside and sort of developing an identity of
Yeah.
yourself doing something. And I think that's very common in all the Google developers experts or someone who has achieved something, that they don't really focus on the goal that I need to do this. Because that, I remember from one of my mentors, Kamran Sultan. He shared this example like, if you have a 10-story building and you're trying to walk up the stairs, and on each stair, if you keep looking at the 10th floor and like, oh,
Yeah.
that's so far, it's going to be very difficult for you to go and motivate yourself. While every
Yeah.
now and then, just look away, just keep going, and then look down how much you have covered. And that really motivates you, like, okay, I'm this far now, let's go beyond this. So
Yeah.
and this is something I also read from the book called Atomic Habits, that you need to develop
Mm.
an identity and attach to it, that I'm someone who likes to share stuff. Now it doesn't matter if people see this or not, but I'm gonna
Mm.
keep doing this. And you never know, like, when you start seeing those results. It might not be instant, but over the
Yes.
time, as you mentioned, you see like, okay, I've achieved already this now,
Yeah.
and didn't even think about it. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, I think you've summarized it perfectly. And I think in my own life, when I've constantly kept looking, like you mentioned that story of example of 10-story builds, I kept looking at that goal or that 10th story. I've not been able to achieve those things.
Mm.
So I think you know setting that aside, developing that identity, and then getting to work, and then doing that work each day, and before you know it, you've done most of the work.
Exactly. I started playing football in Sweden, uh, like from scratch. I never played any sports in my life, but we have a group of Pakistanis here, so we meet every Friday. We play football, but everybody just tries to kick it. as soon as possible before anyone else. And I feel really weird because I would miss the ball all the time. And
Mm,
I when I read the book, I was like, okay, I need to do something. I need to make myself someone who just tries to go to the ground and then just do
yeah.
something. And this Friday, I was actually able to score 3 goals, and
Oh,
I was
wonderful.
shocked. Everyone in the other team was shocked, and I got to learn from 3 different people. They were like, okay, your game has improved in the past few weeks. And I realized I never even thought about like being or doing this. And I just
Mm,
wanted to go and practice and just spend some time, even if it's an half an hour. So it's really fun, or it motivates you not when you really start, but somewhere along the way you start seeing the
yes.
results, and then it sort of boosts you up that, okay, I'm doing in the right direction. But it's really hard for the initial days to just
Yes.
make yourself go there. And I think the identity concept that I'm a person who goes to the
Yeah.
ground every day, it helps really a lot without even thinking like I need to be better at football, because then
Yep.
you don't score, you get
Yeah.
disappointed as well.
Absolutely, and I think I completely agree with you on that. And I remember the first time that I hit. So I didn't care about publishing articles. It would seem so strange to people, and it seems strange to me now. But the first time that I think that was not even that long ago. That was back in January of this year. So I published the article. I wanted to share it with my LinkedIn, people, followers,
Mm,
connections. I was so I was cringing so much. I was like, why would I, how do I do it? And I almost closed my eyes, and then I just pressed, like whatever, I'll just share it that I've written this article. And now I don't care. Now I feel very proud of it. So I think in the beginning you need to have that, like you said, identity mindset. I
mm,
also call it the fake it till you make it mindset. The beginning is always
mm,
going to be uncomfortable, and you should be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
mm,
And then adapt the mindset of it's okay to fail, and if I fail, I'll figure out the next step. But having that having the mindset of I need to figure out what I'll do if I fail at the ninth story of that 10-story building,
mm.
it will not get you anywhere. So yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely, well said. Regarding AI in sort of the innovation landscape right now, we have generative AI, we have so many things going on, so many open models as well. It's fascinating, and I'm a complete AI noob. I have no clue what I'm doing. I've just started learning, stemming, lemmatization, so very basics from someone named Krish Naik on Udemy. So
Oh, yeah.
it's really interesting.
Okay.
Like he's really good at teaching what he does.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, what has been a complex project in your recent career that had a complex problem that you solved with AI, and were there any specific skills from your past experience included in those?
Right. So I think we had this project last year that I led. It was, without giving too many details away, it
Hmm.
was this project of we basically wanted to format documents, so medical case histories, using generative AI, so which is using basically a large language model. And we had a lot of it was a challenging problem because generative AI for POCs and as a buzzword sounds really cool, but when you're doing it for production, it can be a huge challenge. Like you don't even know what's coming your way. And that was my first time actually with any Gen AI project. Like I knew generative AI exists. I used ChatGPT, but it was my first time developing and sort of building that solution. And that was just challenging because of so many things that go wrong when you're doing something for a production use case. So our GPT calls would just we would have out of context errors, we'd have rate limit errors, we would have output errors. So I think that was a complex problem. I think also the deadlines, and that's something that we have our VP Shakan, and he says this a lot. So he's like, when a high pressure situation comes, it's like that law that anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So a lot of things, in that situation. So he says this to me quite often, that in a high pressure situation, just the ability to be technically sound is not going to be enough.
mm,
So in that situation, you need to be able to control your nerves and be able to communicate ahead. And so it was a challenge because technically it was difficult. And then also, like, um, that entire managerial leadership thing that I was talking in the beginning, like that, I didn't know all of those things. So I think it was everything. But I very quickly learned that developing generative AI solutions for production, actually any solution for production, but especially, because that's a lot of the work that's going on right now in the industry.
mm,
It's going to involve a lot of um, combination techniques. So you can't just think that you're going to chunk your document and you're going to feed it to a GPT and going to get perfect results. And everyone's happy, client's happy, you're happy, you go home. That's not good. That's not how it works. It's going to be a combination maybe of some classic NLP techniques. So when you were mentioning stemming, lemmatization, named entity recognition, these are really
mm,
important, and they're going to help.
mm,
And that's where your problem solving skills are going to come to play.
mm,
How do you combine the generative AI techniques with classical ML techniques, with rule based approaches? And that's how we then got the project to work, actually work,
mm,
where it was giving good results. We combined a bunch of things, so it wasn't just there's a lot of back end orchestration going on with
mm,
classical ML and classical NLP. And then we had the Gen AI calls.
mm,
So I think it was that project was difficult, and it was a huge learning experience and curve for me.
mm,
And it just really taught me I think I knew somewhere, but it taught me the value of thinking on your feet. And then good I think problem solving.
mm,
So not being too fixated on this is how it should be. And I see that so much with engineers,
mm,
where they say, oh no, this is the object detection YOLO problem, and that's the only thing that can happen. Or this is this is that.
mm,
So don't keep yourself open to solutions. There's
mm,
usually more than one way to get to the end goal.
mm,
So yeah, that was one. But
mm,
I think I get one or two such every, I think, other month. So now I've gotten sort of used to them.
mm. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing. We do have a question from Omar Kadir. How much will the software engineering profession be affected by AI in the future? The classic question. What do you think?
Yeah. So we have people say two things. Some people say coding is going to just completely go out of fashion, or whatever, in the next few years. I don't agree, because I think if you think that a developer's job is just to code, then sure. Like that's happening right now as well, right? You give a set of requirements to ChatGPT or Claude or whichever model you're using, Gemini, and you say write code for this. It gives you a decent code. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. You can debug, or you can do all of these things. But you have a developer mindset as you're working to get ChatGPT or any of these models to give you the output. So you know what you're doing. You can also debug the solution.
Mm,
So, and maybe these models in the future can also get good at debugging. But I think what might not go out of fashion is problem solving, like I was talking about.
mm,
That ChatGPT or Claude cannot do for you. It can give you that initial roadmap, right, to get started, and it can reduce the time that it takes for you to get a repo up and running. um, but then how do you sort of plug pieces together? How do you optimize solution? How do you productionize it? How do you scale it? So
mm,
I think all those are very real challenges that uh, we tackle, when we're working in the industry. So I think yeah, so the small code bits or of writing code, and even I think in that case as well, right? ChatGPT or any of these models are only as good as what you prompt them or how you instruct them. So even to this day, I know I know what I want, but if my instructions are not clear, it just gives me the most garbage output. So I think that's why engineers and computer scientists and all the young folks that are just graduating or just starting out, they should really focus on problem solving. And I think that sometimes is missing,
Yeah.
um, as people graduate. And I don't blame them because that's really not taught in universities. But it's a skill that you need to work on and develop.
Yeah, absolutely. And I find myself even when I'm using any sort of generative AI as well to keep informing or being like struck like, "Oi, what are you saying? That's not
Yeah,
accurate. That's not what I want. Did you
yeah,
did you forget this part? Why have you said this?" And one needs to be really technically sound to do that. Otherwise, you're just going to implement, whatever it's saying. I was working on some Nginx stuff recently, and it would just give me the weirdest configurations ever. And I'm like, no, I'm in this problem, and it's like,
yeah.
yeah, but you can solve it this way, and I'm on the other
Mm,
problem now, and then it would go in a cycle with just
yes.
reproducing the same thing because it doesn't know any better, or I need to provide better information to it. So yeah, as you said, people need to be really really careful about what they're trying to get from the AI, at least
Yeah.
these days.
Yep.
Uh, we have another question. It's a bit different than the usual. It's how to execute market and successful ed tech startup in Pakistan. I want to me code academy. He wants like a code academy like platform tailored for Pakistani audience. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Um, that's an interesting question, though, but it's also very broad,
Hmm.
and I don't think maybe for execution, I can give you some suggestions, but for marketing and for it to be successful,
Hmm.
once again, I think I'd like to refer back to our conversation earlier.
Hmm.
So my I think suggestion at this point would be to break down the problem, get specific on the business problem. So, what problem are you solving? What's your business idea? And then find out people who are doing something similar or have done something similar. Get on a few calls with them if you can, uh, and pick their brain a little on specific parts of this problem once again. So
Hmm.
you can maybe you can't get on a call and ask someone, how do I execute market, and then you
Yes.
know deployed productionize this all in one. But I think yeah, I think taking it one day at a time
Hmm.
might help, and then breaking down your problem and asking relevant folks for
Yeah.
doing something similar.
Absolutely. And we had a discussion with Mashood yesterday as well. He's sort of someone who has helped businesses grow as well. So please refer to his podcast as well with me. And there were similar questions there as well. But if I summarize it for you, first of all, you need to partner with someone who has a marketing experience or who can execute it, and hire someone who's a marketing experience. So one of the biggest mistakes that I did when I was working on something of my own was just being alone. I was like, hey, I'm super cool full stack developer. I'm going to build everything from scratch. I'm going to have a mobile application. I'm going to pitch it. And I got incubated in Nest.io as well in their second batch. But I miserably failed because I was alone and I had no marketing person. And the majority of the teams who got successful from there were basically building connections and
Mm,
brainstorming and planning instead of coding. So that would be my advice,
yes.
that your focus on the coding part would be
Yeah.
just follow the 80-20 rule. You're going to have 20% of coding and 80% of marketing if you really want to have a successful startup. That's my opinion and research so far.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think in the beginning we make the mistake of, oh, I have I'm a really good engineer. I can build really good things.
Hmm,
But through my experience, I've learned we suck or we fail miserably on about for the business ideation. So
hmm.
spend some time about on the business ideation, that would so, and then you can worry about coding later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coding is going to be an easier problem, I think, to solve.
Yes, ironically, yes.
Yeah.
Mm. Awesome. One more question related to AI, and I think that's one of the biggest questions that we have today in the Google community and the Google sort of ecosystem as well. How do you ensure ethical considerations, when developing AI solutions, and how does it align with the work that Google is doing towards responsible AI?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from the very beginning, so ethical considerations for AI. I think it's once again a very broad term, and it could mean a lot of things. But for me, it comes down to the data that we're using to build our models, and then to then perform inference as well afterwards. So with all kinds of ML models, be it Gen AI or maybe Gen AI can might be a little more forgiving because LLMs are trained on so much data. But for most of our data, the rule is garbage in, garbage out. Or whatever goes in is similar to whatever comes out. So when we talk about responsible AI, it's a very very broad discussion, and I think we are sort of like in the middle of this Gen AI revolution. So I will not pretend to act like I know all of the pieces because there's so many pieces. There's pieces of fairness and there's pieces of ethics and bias and discrimination. But it's important while all these big providers are building these models to ensure that there's you're countering for bias, potential bias or potential discrimination in the data that you're using to train your LLM. And then also, I think if you're building a platform or building a solution, a product around using one of these language models, you need to be aware of if these are my customer groups or customer segments, how well, am I uh, am I introducing bias at any step of the way, and that bias can come, of course, from the large language model, but can also come from other places, such as how you design the UI,
Mm,
right? How the user experiences. So lots of pieces to that puzzle. But I think the biggest one would be uh, ensuring that the data that we're feeding to the model, we are sort of addressing bias and fairness over there. And then I think with responsible AI, it's also very important how we are dealing with user data. So being very careful if you're building, uh, an application where the user is interacting with the application, and that data is going to the language model. How do
mm,
you convey it then also to the user, making sure that you're not collecting any sensitive information, or if you
mm,
are, then you're anonymizing it if you're using that information to train the model. So lots of things, I think. But you can get. I think one of the things that you can do is to get started with you know documentation considerations for some of these big companies. For example, Google itself,
mm,
like you mentioned, has a responsible AI. This entire, I think, domain, and there's great documentation and great resources online
mm,
in that space.
mm. Absolutely. And I can see we are almost, or we are actually out of time. But I do want to ask you two questions if you're okay with that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so the first one, how do you maintain work-life balance in such a demanding field? And do you work on any side projects along the side, or now do you keep balance?
It's something that I really struggle with.
Mm,
I'm the wrong person to ask. I think I struggled with it a lot last year, and sort of putting some rules in place for myself
mm,
to ensure, because of the kind of role that I'm in. There's a lot of people that I have to answer to, and a lot of ensuring that things work. So sometimes the center point. So, but I'm now trying to not look at my Slack or my work email after 6,
mm,
unless it's a client meeting that I need to take. So ensuring that I finish the work before 6, and then not log in before 9 or 10 whenever I start my day.
Hmm.
I've not fully achieved this, but I'm trying, and it's like one goal at a time, one day at a time kind of
Hmm.
thing for me.
Hmm.
Um, I love working on side projects, and it's difficult because my days are so filled with work.
Hmm.
And I, like you mentioned with that book Atomic Habits,
Hmm.
um, it's like what can I do each day. So if my Mondays and my Tuesdays are very very busy, so I try not to touch those, and I try not to put any extra burden on those days. But then Wednesdays might be easier, and Thursdays and Fridays are a lot easier. So then
Hmm.
I plan side projects around those days,
Hmm.
and then plan them in like short sprints. So I have like this end goal of if I want to write an article, because sometimes if I'm writing an article, it tends to become too complex because I learn things along the way. So I try to stick to a deadline for myself, and try to stick to like a complexity of the problem, so I'm able to achieve it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think over time I've gotten better with finding out pockets from my day that I can dedicate to side projects.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it's that rule of 10% for your personal, I think, life each day, and then maybe 20 to 30%, uh, for any side projects. And sometimes they overlap. Sometimes it's just 10%
Hmm.
for your side projects, and then 30 to 40% for your personal life. And sometimes it can sort of, you have a slow day at work, and then you
Hmm.
can do something there.
Hmm.
So still figuring it out, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's a lifelong struggle,
Yeah,
and one needs to just keep studying. Awesome. The last question for you is for the women in AI and the future. Based on your experience, what advice would you give to young women aspiring to be a leader in AI or starting out with AI? What do you think?
that's a great question. I'd say stay curious. Keep you know. I think that's one of the things that motivates me every single day. I don't wake up excited to go to work every day, but there is excitement on, what am I learning or what am I going to solve today. So stay curious. Be open minded about uh, the path. So don't be stuck on just like one thing, and sometimes it works out for people, but I've seen at least I've seen it to be true in my case that each time I've stayed open-minded about things, that has worked out. And then just um, market yourself. I think we don't do that enough,
Hmm.
especially as women. Make sure that you're telling the world or the people around you in your company what you've achieved, um, and then telling your connections, and yeah, telling those around you what you've achieved, and what, yeah, what you're willing to do, and not just work hard in silence. I think
Hmm.
that's a mistake that a lot of women make, that they you know get too shy, or sort of are not willing to take up the space. Sometimes you have to take up the space and then some, especially as women, but also as men, I think. So advice would apply to both
Hmm.
men and women, or all people in Pakistan. I think we're just kind of afraid to market ourselves. So yeah, I think stay curious, and then just let that curiosity guide you as
Yeah,
you figure out your
absolutely.
path.
Yeah, and I can add to that that when we are usually talking about sharing your achievements on LinkedIn, I think it's also okay to share your failures as well, because
Absolutely.
one has to be really authentic, because we usually just see,
Uh,
okay, this person did this, but not the struggles. And I think it's okay. It depends from person to person. Not everyone is comfortable sharing their failures, but it really gives you the boost of not being afraid. I remember one talk that I was looking at YouTube, and the person is a sort of motivational speaker slash guide to a lot of businesses, and he's like, I was going about to go to this stage, and I had eaten something the previous night, and it caused me diarrhea. And he was like, okay, now I don't know what to do. So he told his team, I'm just going to go there and I'm going to tell everybody what happened. And they were like, no, you cannot do that. That's not a good idea. They're professionals. And then he was like, okay. And he went to the stage. And the first thing he said was, okay, I have diarrhea and I had food poisoning. But then what really happened is that a lot of people laughed. A lot of people said, like, who's this guy? What is he saying? But what happened was a lot of people actually saw him being vulnerable and being authentic, and then he did not have any sort of stress that something could go wrong and he would have to go. And even if something bad happened, he would have already told them, so he can just say, okay, I have to go now, and everybody would
Yeah,
understand, rather than not saying anything and then just leaving if something goes wrong. So that was a really interesting moment for me to just reflect on how easy it becomes when you show your authentic self. No, it is what,
yeah,
or this is who I
yeah,
am, and it's
absolutely.
not just all gold, so to say.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, um, I think we all have these museums of failures that we don't advertise. No one
Mm.
talks about it. If I started talking about failures or rejections or you know professional heartbreaks, it would not fit in one podcast. But somewhere along the way, like I've been very honest. I think in some other spaces about my struggles as I've gotten to where I've gotten. But somewhere along the way, you have to become okay with failing. That's if you, when you take the risk, that's the that's the cost that comes with opportunities.
Absolutely.
So I think somewhere along the way, you need to just be okay with failure
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
realize that everyone, like all the people, even the people that you look up to, they've had difficulties in those journeys. It's how you wake up the next day and how you deal with that
Exactly.
matters.
And I think it's really important to first be okay with that yourself, and then you can
Yeah.
be open to others. But yeah, there's always that little voice in our head telling, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 don't do that. You're gonna feel
Yes.
anxiety after it. Hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. This was super entertaining. Thank you so much, Tareem, for joining us, for sharing your insights. It was really fun. And I hope that we can meet someday on a Google event or maybe something
Yeah.
else.
Absolutely.
Uh, and I would probably be peeking at your stuff on the GD at Voku and see what you're doing, so I can steal some of your presentations or your work and take inspiration from that. I'm trying to become a MLGD myself, but not anytime soon. It's gonna take a lot of time for me to learn something and then apply. But
I
yeah,
think you'll get there hopefully very soon, SM. And thank you
eh,
so much. I think this was really wonderful. Really enjoyed the questions and the conversation. And yeah, I need to still populate my Edwoku with contributions because it's all been overwhelming with the amount of I think resources that they share with you.
mm,
But I'd be more than happy to help out if you ever have any questions.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much for joining again. And thank you so much for the audience for the questions as well. And as I mentioned, this is just the first one. We are going to have a lot more podcasts, a lot of more cool people like Tahreem. And it's going to be a fun ride from here on. So thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your Sunday from wherever you are. And